This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media, my columns at the Colorado Springs Independent, my other podcasts, my photography website, all that kind of stuff there. You can even send me an email if you have a comment, question, suggestion for a podcast topic. Always love hearing those. All that stuff at hikingbob.com. Today's an old friend who I haven't seen in a while. It's been a minute or two since we've had a chance to have her on the podcast. Alicia Filley, also known as the Healthy Hiker.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
It is great, Alicia. Nice to see you again. It's been, like I said, a minute or two since we've talked, but glad to have you back on here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome. Well, for those who don't know, who haven't listened to previous podcasts, hey, why not? You need to go back and listen to all the ones I've done with Alicia. She's a physical therapist, and she is a hiker. And we've actually had the opportunity when she visited here and her family to hike together, which was awesome. She does these great workshops and one-on-one and emails about how to go out hiking and stay healthy and avoid injury. And if you have an issue on how to deal with that, a great resource. I tap into it probably more often than she'd like. I'm a pest. But somebody great to talk to, and just it's good to have somebody in that sphere of the medical world who's also in the hiking thing. I've run into a lot of people in the medical world in my history of doing this who don't really understand, I think, what it's like to actually be out there on a long trail or anything. So, Alicia, thank you so much for being here again today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. And I love that, what you just said. When you are a hiker, it does give you a different perspective. And because of my background in physical therapy, I have a real understanding of biomechanics and what's needed. And so many times when I'm talking to a hiker and I explain a concept or I explain why they're having challenges, they just kind of have this aha moment and they said, oh, I've never thought of it that way. No one's ever explained it that way. So it does just give you a little bit of a different perspective. And, when you've got miles on your feet, miles on the trail, you really understand some of those challenges and where they're coming from. And I understand you've had some challenges lately.
Yeah, and the listeners, if anybody here has been a regular listener, for those who haven't, here's the synopsis of it. Basically, I've been dealing with foot and ankle injuries for the last actually a couple of years. Got worse this year where it was really difficult to walk. There's a tendon ligament that runs down the outside of your foot called the peroneal. I think that's a peroneal or something like that. I'm not sure I got the pronunciation right. Basically, hold your foot in place. Mine has been torn and is weak. So when I walk, my right foot keeps wanting to rotate out. That throws off my gait, which then affects my calf muscles because they're trying to line me back up. It's a cascading thing. I'm finally going to get to, by the time this airs, I will have seen an orthopedist and probably have some kind of plan on how things are going to get fixed. And because of that, my hikes this year, I barely made my 800-mile goal. Didn't even make 801. It was like 800.97 miles, but it was my goal for 2024. And for the many years before that, to hit 800 miles. I've been told by many friends to knock it off and make it 500 miles, but I am not one to go back on things. And it's an issue. And, I even though I'm getting older, I want to keep going forward. So this year was a barely forward year, or 2024 was a barely forward year. So I guess we're going to start off with that, and you're going to focus, I think you were telling me, on how that affects balance and why balance is so important for people.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm glad you're getting it looked at. I'm glad you're getting it taken care of and you consulted your medical professionals. And I always recommend that. If you ever have any questions, you ever are concerned, Dr. Google is great, but I always recommend go see your specialist, go see your primary care people. I always recommend people getting things checked out, if for no other reason than your peace of mind, right? Because there's a lot to be said for confidence in your body and understanding that you're going to be safe. So having said that, yes, when you're dealing with ankle issues, it definitely throws off your balance. And balance is something that came up recently in my coaching group. So I have a couple of coaching programs, and one of them is called Hiker Fit. And that is where hikers who just want to stay fit, who are interested in staying strong for the trail, come and they get their workouts. And then we meet once a week and we have a very strong community. And one of the questions that came up in our community during coaching was about balance. I'm having less balance as I age, I guess was the question. And things seem to be harder. And what can I do about balance, and can it get better? So I just thought that would be an interesting topic to tie in with your ankle issues. And let's just kind of have a primer and a review on balance and what's all involved and what happens with it. So when we're talking about balance, one of the things that I try to explain to people is really learning where your center of gravity is. So if you were to stand with your feet hip distance apart, just a normal stance, and you start to shift your weight to one side, you find that place. You can shift so far until one of your feet wants to come off the floor. And that tells you that that is the end of your center of balance. So if you think about, like, basically there's a circle around you where you can stay steady with your feet hip distance apart. And if you go beyond that circle, you're going to have to implement some sort of strategy to stay upright, right? It's just sort of like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it can only go so far. And if it goes a little further, that thing's going to topple over. The same is true with your body. So there's a couple of interesting things. When you then stand with your feet a little wider apart, that circle around you also gets wider, and it's much easier to stay steady with your feet wider because you have a wider base of support. All right, so we've talked about center of mass over your base of support. Then if you go and you put your feet right next to each other, you have a very narrow base of support. And if you lean, all of a sudden you start to lose balance much more quickly. So that is a narrower center of gravity as well. So you can sort of play around with that and see where your stability lies, and just, start to get that body awareness. That's kind of one of the first clues. So have you noticed any change in your center of gravity or your ability to be balanced since you've been struggling with your foot issues?
Not that I've noticed, but I haven't done that test that you described. I think that I might need a center of gravity the size of the Great Pyramids, but I mean, that wide. But I haven't noticed that necessarily, not while standing. Now, maybe when I'm hiking and I'm moving on it, when I'm standing there, the ankle is pretty steady. It's when I'm moving that I feel that that wants to keep rotating out because of that ligament damage. But I'm sure that's exactly what that is that's throwing off my center of balance.
Yeah. So what happens then when you're hiking is that you have variations in your base of support, right? So if you are maybe crossing a creek or walking on a log, your base of support gets very narrow. You almost have one foot in front of the other. When you are stepping over a rock, now your base of support is really narrow because you're only on one foot. So when your base of support changes, your center of mass changes, and your body needs to be able to accommodate those things. So there are lots of ways that you can help your balance, but one of the things I want to talk about too is what happens as you age, because I don't know about you, a lot of people in my audience are Gen Xers, and we're kind of starting to get up there. Even, I work with people who would be considered boomers, and so we are aging, but we want to stay active. But some of the things that we notice is that our balance is starting to decline. And as you age, one of the greatest risk factors for mortality and morbidity, meaning quality of life, independent living, is a fall. That's one of the things that really can take people out of independent living as they age. So we really want to minimize falls. And why does your balance decrease with age? Well, one of the reasons is that as we get older, we typically tend to lose muscle mass and strength. That is just a natural phenomenon, age-related muscle loss. It's called sarcopenia. If we do nothing about it, we're going to lose a significant amount of muscle mass. And so when you think of elderly people being frail, that's why. It's just your body's aging process. That can be offset with resistance training, but people just need to be aware that that is what happens. As you age, you also lose flexibility. So again, with aging, just there's a rigidity that starts to set in, and we become less mobile a lot of time. And so we're not doing crazy things like hanging off of jungle gyms and things that are going to take our joints to their end range and hold them there and stretch. So you will have reduced flexibility. We also have changes in our vision. So whether it's macular degeneration or just normal age-related visual changes. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't see 2 feet in front of me. I can see 10 feet, but I can't see 2 feet. So, those visual changes can affect your balance because we rely a lot on our visual feedback to help us stay upright. And we also have changes in our proprioception. That's just the body's awareness of its position in space. So those nerve endings just don't fire as quickly as they used to. And we don't practice it as much as we used to. We're not walking on a curb like a balance beam. We're not jumping over sidewalk cracks. We're not playing hopscotch, doing things that we did when we were younger. And then lastly, we have vestibular system changes. So the vestibular system is what's responsible for maintaining your equilibrium. It's in your inner ear. And sometimes people even get vertigo and get dizziness as you age because some of those cells start to, kind of, I don't want to say, they just don't function as well as they used to. I don't want to get too technical. They don't function as well as they used to. So that also can affect our balance. So as we age, we're kind of fighting for our balance in lots of different ways.
Well, I'm a boomer, so definitely I'm on that older age group. So definitely, let me ask you a question. I hear a lot about the advantages of weight training or resistance training, and I used to be a big weightlifter. I mean, 30 some odd years ago, I would be bench pressing 300 some odd pounds, and for a short guy like me, that was an odd look. So I kind of thought maybe that wasn't a great idea until I hurt my shoulder, had to have it operated on. I said, maybe this isn't such a smart idea. I have a lot of ideas. Not all of them are good ones. So when you're a hiker, like you and I and most of the people listening to this are, and we're out there a lot, is it important to do other strength training for like your legs? Is that necessarily important, or is just doing that activity enough to keep your muscles strong and healthy and flexible?
Yeah, I think that it is important for a lot of reasons. So resistance training is definitely important to stay strong. When you hike, you're going to be using your muscles in a certain way, but you're not using them in a way that is necessarily the most efficient for strength training. The objective is just a little bit different. So whatever you do in the gym or in your home to train to become stronger is going to result in better hiking. So it's always a mistake for people to think, I'm going to go out on the trail in the spring and I'm just going to get my trail legs. Like I'm just going to suck it up for a couple of weeks until I get my trail legs. Well, that's a problem because during that couple of weeks, you're asking your body to do something it's not really used to, and you set yourself up for possible injury. That's especially a big mistake for through hikers, who just think, oh, I'm just going to spend that first month and I'll eventually get my trail legs. Well, you will if you don't get injured first, right? And also why be miserable?
I was going to say a through hiker, the time to definitely not be learning how to get your trail legs is on the first month of the. I mean, you're going to be out there for 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it takes. Where you're doing the AT or the PCT or something like that. Seems like that's definitely not the time to do it. What about us who hike all year round? I mean, we're out there constantly, like people like you and I and a lot of other people. Is it as important for people who are out there constantly to still do some kind of leg resistance or weight training or something like that?
Absolutely. people tell me all the time, but I can hike 10 miles. How can I be weak? How can I have weakness? How can I have deficits?
That's actually a good question.
Especially if you're having pain, like if you're having knee pain or something like that, the body is incredibly adept at making substitutions, at calling in other systems to help out when something is weak. So the brain doesn't care how you get there. It just wants you to get from point A to point B. So you might be recruiting muscles that aren't necessarily designed for that to be their primary function. In other words, especially when it relates to knee pain, or to ankles, just as you described. When you're out hiking, now your calf is getting strained because it's trying to do the job of a muscle that can't function right now. So that's a perfect example. If you have any kind of weakness, another muscle is going to try and cover the job and do the work, but it's not designed for that. And so you're going to get some sort of strain or overuse or set up some kind of inflammatory process because it's doing something it's not really designed to do. So yes, there is an advantage to getting in the gym, making sure the muscles are doing exactly what they're supposed to do so that everybody's doing the right job once you get out on the trail.
I do a routine several times a week with some kettlebells that I have, and I mostly focus on, with that, upper body and abdominal strength, because I know that when I'm hiking, those muscles are not getting any work. I'm not doing anything leg-wise, so maybe I should work on doing some more leg-related stuff. But I know that I need to do the upper body stuff, and all of that. Of course, it's correct me if I'm wrong. It's a big system. So, just working the upper body doesn't mean it's not benefiting everything else. If I'm making my upper body stronger, my core stronger, that also helps with, I imagine, with balance and all that other stuff, I guess. So I think my failing here is that I've got calves of steel, but maybe not the thigh, maybe not the thighs to go with it.
No, you bring up a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned the core, because the core really acts as the body's center of gravity and it supports your posture. So when you're standing or moving, your core is going to stabilize your spine and your pelvis, and it's going to really ensure that your body remains upright. And that's really essential for balance. So if you begin to sway, let's go back to that first exercise where you're standing with your feet hip distance apart and you start to lean towards one side. Long before your foot wants to lift off the ground, your core is starting to engage to help keep you up. Now, if that core isn't strong and isn't used to working, then you're going to lose your balance more quickly. But if the core is strong, it can correct you before your ankle really even has to get involved. So keeping your core strong is really essential. And it's one of the things that I find a lot of hikers ignore. And so when I work with my hikers, I have a quick core workout they do twice a week. It's usually about 5 to 6 minutes. You do not have to train your core for hours. Like, that's a big mistake. You've got to hit it hard for about 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and you can be done. And you can really start to make some progress in your core strength and your core stability. And it's so fun when I have a hiker come to me and say, "Oh my gosh, I could feel my core. I was out on the trail. I felt my core. I felt my body working in a way that I hadn't felt before." Or someone messaged me one day, she said, "I went ice skating today and I could feel my core." That has never happened. So you really have to have that strong core to assist in staying upright and to maintain your balance. It's really important. Because if you don't, again, you're going to ask your knees and your ankles to do the work that your core should be doing, right? And so if you think of your body as sort of, again, that leaning tower of Pisa, if it can upright itself from the place it starts to lean, well, that's so much better than if the foundation starts to have to move, right? So it's important to keep that core nice and strong.
So I've got a routine I do. It's 15 minutes with my kettlebells, and it's basically a series. I'm trying to think here. I think it's 6 exercises I do, and I have a timer, so it's 30 seconds each with 1 second in between, and that keeps going through that cycle for 15 minutes. And it's 15 minutes, I usually have something on the TV that's distracting me, and I have a timer on my phone that just 30 seconds, it sounds a bell. You have a second to switch, the kettlebell to another hand and go to the next thing, and that seems to work. And it's 15 minutes. It's nothing out of the day to do that. So if people listening, kind of curious what it takes, and kettlebells are pretty inexpensive, and they're a great. They're much more user friendly, I think, than a barbell or a dumbbell or something like that. I really like kettlebells. I have a bunch of different weights of those that I use for different things. Let me ask you something real quick about balance. There's always a debate about hiking poles. Should you hike with hiking poles? Should not hike with hiking poles? I think hiking poles are definitely something to have their place. I tend not to hike with them because I typically have my dog. I don't know how to handle a leash and 2 hiking poles at the same time. Sometimes I'll take 1 hiking pole with me. I find them useful for if you're carrying a lot of weight. Obviously, a through hiker is definitely going to want those to take a lot of the weight off. I think if you're on a surface that might be slippery, you want it for stability, maybe to check the ice or maybe just to keep yourself from slipping. But should they be relied on for balance? I mean, obviously, we don't want to say you're on your own and if you fall over, you fall over. You want to have something. But should you rely on your hiking poles for balance, or should you build up the strength so you don't need them for balance?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I want to address that, but I also want to go back to your routine that you're doing, which is awesome. I want to commend you on working out. And you raise a great point. It doesn't have to be forever, right? You don't have to be hours in the gym or anything like that to make good progress. So when I work with folks, it's 30 minutes a day. That's it. We're not, this is not a bro mentality. Like, you can be a healthy hiker and stay nice and strong doing these short kinds of workouts. I want to make sure to also emphasize that you need to challenge yourself and increase that resistance over time or increase reps, because the goal of it is to get your muscles to fatigue. Fast movements and kettlebells are great for fatiguing muscles, but making sure you're reaching that muscular fatigue so that you're gaining strength.
I keep buying bigger kettlebells.
Awesome. So let's talk about hiking poles. I'm glad you brought that up. Hiking poles are fantastic. I think everyone should have them. I think everyone should use them, or at least have them available to you. And here's what hiking poles do. They increase your base of support. So going back to our original setup here, you've got your feet hip distance apart. That's a certain base of support. You make them wider, you're more stable, you have an increased base of support, but you don't hike like a sumo wrestler, right? You don't. So you hike with oftentimes a very narrow base of support. Trails are narrow, or you're navigating. And so when you use hiking poles, you now become a 4-legged creature instead of a 2-legged creature. And now you have a much wider base of support. Therefore, your center of gravity has a lot more space to move. You have a larger place where your center of mass can sort of play around and move, and you can stay stable. So hiking poles are great for that. They're great for balance, and everyone should have them and use them. And if you're hiking with a pet, some people use those chest harnesses or hook them onto their waist belt. I don't know. I can't remember what your setup is with Cole. Do you have him hooked to you?
Just a leash.
You hold it? You hold his leash?
I hold his leash only because I don't want that 55-pound dog pulling me at the hips from one end, and then I'm going to be calling you saying my hips hurt all the time because my dog is yanking me from one side to the other. So I don't have that for Cole, and I've thought about that, and I've done it where I've just looped his, the loop end of his leash through the belt on my waist pack, with mixed results. So I mean, he's good at staying close by, but he wants to stop at everything, and I can't imagine him tugging up my waist every time he stops everything. So
right. All right. Yeah. So even if you have one hiking pole, it definitely will increase your base of support, and it can help with balance. Now, here's the problem. If you are white knuckling those hiking poles and you're holding on for dear life, or you're having shoulder pain from hiking and with poles, that's telling me that you are leaning on them. Hiking poles are not meant to be for leaning. If they break, and I've seen that happen, you're leaning on them too much. They're taking too much of your weight. So they're not supposed to be crutches. They are simply there to help you with your balance and base of support. in those instances, yes, you've got to start getting stronger so that you can support your own body and that you can be confident when you're doing things like stepping down and going downhill. That's really when people tend to really rely on those hiking poles, over rely on them, and they're doing a job they shouldn't be doing. The other thing is making sure that you're adjusting your hiking poles correctly. So they should always be a little bit shorter when you're hiking uphill. They should be a little bit longer when you're hiking downhill so that you're not having to reach so far with them and put a stress on your joints. So that's the other thing I'd check if people say, well, my shoulders hurt. Sometimes it's their hiking poles are adjusted too high and they're putting a stress on their shoulders.
I see a lot of people when I'm out there with their hiking poles that are just not adjusted properly. They're too low, so they're leaning into them, or they're too high, so they're, like you said, they're up above their shoulder or something, and then there's shoulder pain. I see that a lot on the trails, and it's very easy to readjust. You can get into it, and readjusting them. Readjusting them as you're going uphill, shortening them, going downhill, lengthening them a little bit, so that angle. And really quickly, the angle is that when you have the hiking pole in your hand, you're on level ground, the hiking pole is next to you or slightly in front of you. Your elbow and your upper arm and your lower arm should be at a 90-degree angle. If it's lower than that, it's too low. If it's higher than that, it's too high. I think that's the best way to put it. And every company has different ways of adjusting them, but that's pretty much
I think
it.
that's really the standard to know where to start. But then as you go uphill, you want to have that angle in your elbow a little bit more obtuse, a little wider, because that will mean your hiking pole is a little shorter. So when you're going uphill, obviously the ground is closer to you with each step. So you want to be at a place where when you move that hiking pole up, your elbow is back again at about 90 degrees. And then, of course, the opposite happens when you're going downhill. The ground is a little bit further away from you. So you want that hiking pole a little bit longer.
Because I really have pretty good balance. People tell you, I've even turned around and talked to people. I'm hiking backwards on a trail and rarely ever, I've never had an incident. But I like them when I'm on uneven terrain, stepping down or up. Especially on a surface that might be a little sketchy, that I'm using that pole to kind of just make sure that I'm getting a good grip or stabilizing myself on uphills and downhills. But your point that you should, having them, I'm always afraid that if I use that I'm not going to build up that core strength by balancing myself, I guess. But your thing is you should use them anyway.
Yeah, I think they're great to have, and you can really sort of check on your reliance with it, like how strongly are you gripping the handle? And if you just have a light touch on the handle, then you're using them correctly. If you've got the death grip and you've got you're white knuckling those handles, that's usually too much. The only time that can really be appropriate is when you are hiking uphill and you've got a really steep step up and you dig that hiking pole in and sort of use it as a leverage to help you up. That can happen. But you mentioned something about going downhill and being sure and confident, and hiking poles can help you do that. And that confidence really plays a role in just feeling secure. You're going to move better when you feel more stable and secure.
And of course, the idea is not to fall and get injured or anything like that. So how does somebody, when they're out hiking, how do they recognize that they might be having a balance issue? I mean, when I think of balance issue, I think of a weeble wobble and it just falls over or something like that. Obviously, if you're falling over, that's not a good sign, and obviously something needs to be taken care of. But if somebody's just out there hiking every day, is there something they should be looking for to say, I need to concentrate on my balance a little bit more, that maybe I'm having an issue? What are they looking for when they're out there?
Well, I think hiking can certainly help your balance because you're challenging your balance. But if you are feeling timid, if you are not feeling secure doing things like crossing creeks or navigating obstacles, if you are moving really slow and you find you're not keeping up with your hiking partners, part of that can be because you don't feel confident in your balance and stability. So you slow down. When you feel secure, then your movements will be quicker. And so, if you just are feeling really cautious and you want to move faster, you want to have more agility, then balance is one of those things that you can start to work on.
And it sounds like that balance should be a standard part of your workout routine. So, what would be some exercises somebody could do that would improve their balance? What if they're at home and they have a resistance band or a kettlebell or a couple of dumbbells or whatever? What would be a good way for somebody to do something in their home on the days when they're not going out hiking, or even the days they are? Maybe do it before you go out, that they could increase their balance.
Yeah. So first thing is absolutely be doing a core workout. A couple of times a week, work on your core. And by core, I don't just mean the sexy ab muscles. I mean the whole corset that goes around your body. It's going to hold you up. So that includes your back. It includes your whole pelvic girdle. It includes your shoulder girdle too. So, making sure that you're doing a generalized core workout a couple times a week is the place to start for sure.
Get
And
those
then
massive pectorals and lats and all that other stuff in there too.
absolutely, absolutely. And then the next thing is some simple things that you can do just around the house. You can play with that base of support just like you would if you were a kid. So when you are brushing your teeth, you can think about, can I stand on one leg? How can I balance while I'm doing this movement? When you're waiting for your coffee to warm up, or get done making your coffee, you can again work on standing on one leg. You can work on walking toe to toe. That really narrows your base of support. Again, do this safely. Do this where you've got some guards, some places you can hold on if you start to lose your balance. So walking heel to toe, just like on a balance beam, but just do it on the floor. You can practice standing, and again, someplace where you're safe, closing your eyes, decreasing your visual input, and really paying attention to your body. Notice where it sways. Notice, can you correct your body when it does sway? Practice shifting your weight outside of that base of support. Standing on one leg, open and closing your eyes. Walking backwards is another great way to practice your balance. Again, very safely. I recommend you do that like down a hallway where you can reach out and touch the walls. That's a very safe place to practice walking backwards with it when there's nothing in front of you. So those are all things that you can do to work on your balance. Some other more formal activities, yoga is helpful. Yoga really works on static balance. That's balancing when you're standing in one place, and then things like Tai Chi work on dynamic balance. You're moving. They're very slow and controlled movements. And Tai Chi has been extensively studied in helping improve balance in the elderly. So we can really impact the number of falls and your fall risk with activities like Tai Chi, or even just some of these other things that you can do. Now, if you want to do a little bit more formal kinds of exercise, there's definitely some things that you can do that can improve your balance. And a lot of those are single leg exercises. So anything that you can do on one leg. So even if you're doing something simple like bicep curls, can you stand on one leg while you're doing your bicep curls? Another one is a step down. So you're on a step and you just slowly and controlled step down and heel tap. You tap your heel on the floor and then stand back up. And then something that's more advanced that I really work on with hikers is a single leg Romanian deadlift. So a lot of people have trouble with that. And that's really, really changing your center of gravity when you're standing on one leg.
I've never heard of that. I don't know too many dead Romanians, so I'm not sure that. Sorry, I've never heard of that. What is that?
So do you know what a RDL is? A Romanian deadlift?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
You don't know what a deadlift is? Okay.
No. Well, I know what a deadlift is, but I'm not sure what a Romanian deadlift is.
Oh, well, it's a deadlift. It's just think of a deadlift, and then think of doing a deadlift on one leg.
Okay.
With the other leg up in the air. So I will tell people, and again, you can tell I work with a population of a certain age. Do you remember those little birds that people used to have on their desk, and there was a bulb at the end of it and the bird would
Oh,
dip
yeah.
down and dip
Yep. They
down
had a
and dip
red
down.
fluid in it. It would
Yes,
just
there
go
was a
back and
red
forth.
fluid.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that's sort of what you look like when you're doing a single leg deadlift.
Okay.
Is you're standing on one leg, you're hinging at the hips down, and then your other leg is coming behind you in the air. So you're almost, like a single
I'm picturing like a
plane.
seesaw. You would look like a seesaw.
Yes, a bit like a seesaw. Exactly. Exactly. You have a slight bend in the knee, and then you use your hamstrings and your glutes to bring you back to standing. So this is a hamstring and glute exercise, and it's something that people can really play with so that they can, work on their balance.
Some of what you described to do this sounds like what you see on TV when somebody's getting pulled over for a DUI. Standing on one foot, walking heel to toe.
Yeah.
Close your eyes and touch your nose to your finger to your nose. It sounds like a DUI checkpoint.
Well, you're not wrong, actually. Those are all tests of balance. And when
Right.
you have, when you have a substance on board that's going to impair your physical ability, that's one quick way to test it, right?
Right.
So exactly, those are same kinds of activities. I'd rather think of it though as playground activities. Try something you used to do on a playground.
Sorry, with my law enforcement background and stuff, I just naturally just drift to that. But yeah, this is not an excuse to practice so you can get away with a DUI. This is just an excuse to be a better hiker.
100%.
So all of this sounds like the good thing about this, and in the years that we've talked, what I liked about our conversations is almost everything we've talked about here is stuff that you could do in your home during the course of your normal day without having to spend a bunch of money for fancy equipment. I mean, I'm not going to say that going to the gym is not a good thing. I used to be a gym rat, but you don't even have to spend money on a gym membership. A couple of kettlebells will cost you a little bit of money, but you'll have them forever, and they're an incredibly versatile strength training tool. I absolutely love those. All this stuff is stuff you can just do during the course of your day. Spend a couple. I have to sometimes remind myself, hey, I'm not hiking today, especially on days when I'm not hiking for whatever reason. The weather's bad. Maybe today's a good day to go get those kettlebells and do my 15-minute routine and get that in, because I'm not going to be doing anything else physical today. So that's a good day to go do that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Most of my clients work out at home. I have a few that like to go to a gym, and absolutely we can do that, and you can do your workouts in a gym. But most of mine just like to work out at home. Typically, the equipment that they have at home are resistance bands, and everybody's got a few hand weights sitting around. So that's what we use, and it really is just 30 minutes. Consistency over intensity. You don't have to go kill yourself at the gym every day, but if you can do a little bit every day or every other day, then you really can make progress, and you start to see things on the trail, like you move better, you recover better. You're not on the couch, after a 5 or 7 mile hike and spending the rest of the day, flat out because you're just so spent and tired, or you're achy and sore the next day. Can start to do longer and more challenging trails, which is always just a lot of fun. Here's the thing about hikers is that we always want to do more. We always want to see what's around the next bend. And so when your ability and your confidence improves, you can also hike a little bit more quickly. You have more confidence to join hiking groups. There's a lot of people who want to join a group. Maybe they've joined a group. Maybe they lurk on their Facebook page, but they're scared to sign up because they're not sure they can keep up. They're not sure that they're going to be able to do it. So when you train at home, the results on the trail are just so fun.
Awesome. All this stuff sounds so easy. A lot of it's common sense. I think it just, obviously if your whole body is strong, then everything else is going to fall into place, not just your legs. Or, don't be one of those people who goes to the gym and has big, great arm and chest muscles, and you've got legs that look like toothpicks. Obviously, that's not a very balanced way to live. I saw a lot of that by days at the gym. They look like Arnold Schwarzenegger from the top from the waist up and olive oil from the waist down. So,
Well,
why olive oil came up, but
those people have, different goals.
sure.
So if your goal, people I work with, our goal is to stay healthy
Right.
so that we can hike as long as we're able, right? And to just keep hiking and keep staying healthy. So that's our goal. Nobody that I work with wants to be a fitness model. We just want to be able to, be ready when the hike happens, right? When you have the opportunity. I had the opportunity to go to Colorado Springs a couple of weekends ago. It was something that just came up sort of out of the blue, and it was awesome. And we went to Garden of the Gods, and we, were out there for a few hours, and we did fine because we stay fit, we stay healthy, and we're ready. We're ready when the hike happens. So when you have those opportunities, you want to be able to take them.
And when you came and visited me, we did Mount Muskoka, and you guys did great on that trip. Even with
Yeah,
my
that was so fun.
even with my barky loud dog.
Well, we love Cole.
He took to you guys pretty quickly. It was a great trip. Alicia, again, great information as always. I really appreciate it. I think, people like myself, I've been frustrated with this injury, but I know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Just sometimes we need some guidance. How can people find you, contact you, sign up with you to get more guidance and advice and lead a healthy hiking lifestyle?
Yeah, well, they can take a look at my website, thehealthyhiker.com. Sign up for my newsletter. I have a free guide to healthy knees on my website there that you can sign up for. It's 3 exercises and 3 stretches to do 3 times a week to stay strong and healthy and support your knees. So they can find me there, and they can reach out and contact me if you have any questions.
Awesome. Well, Alicia, anything else you want to tell us before we go? It's been a great conversation with you, as always is. Very informative, very helpful. Anything else you want to tell us that maybe I forgot to ask you before we go?
Yeah, it's winter time. A lot of us are sort of locked into a little bit of a cold snap right now. It's a perfect time to start thinking about how you're going to stay strong or get strong for spring hiking so that you're ready. You're ready when the thaw happens, you're ready when the hike happens, when the opportunity comes, you're strong and ready. So I just always encourage people to use winter time to do some of those strengthening, balance training activities that maybe you are not thinking about once you're able to get out on the trail.
Awesome. And people can also get with you and get more one-on-one training and advice, correct?
Absolutely. I have 2 programs right now. I have Hiker Fit, and then I also have a knee pain program. So if you're experiencing knee pain when you're hiking, especially when you're going downhill, reach out to me. Let's talk. I've got a proven program that is going to help you hike with a whole lot less knee pain.
Awesome. Well, that's Alicia Filley at thehealthyhiker.com. A great resource, wonderful person, always a joy to talk. And Alicia, thank you so much again for being on the podcast. Always love having you on here. It's a good time.
Oh, it's great to see you, Bob. I love our conversations.
And everybody, thank you for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.